We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Welcome to our new online lesson. I am Mr. Hoven, and today we are talking about the Constitution of the United States of America, and we will be referring to it today as the living Constitution. Now, what you heard at the beginning of this online lesson was the preamble of the Constitution of the United States. The preamble is the opening statement, and it sets 6 specific goals for the Constitution. The first was to form a more perfect union. When the Constitution was written, the states saw themselves as separate nations. The framers wanted to work together as a unified nation. The second, establish justice. Today, the American justice system requires that the law be applied fairly to every American, regardless of race, religion, gender, or country of origin. Third was to ensure domestic tranquility. Under the Constitution, the national government has the power to ensure domestic tranquility or peace and order at home. Next was to provide for the common defense. The framers of the Constitution gave the national government the power to raise armies and navies. Following was to promote the general welfare. The Constitution set out to give the national government the means to promote the general welfare or the well-being of all its citizens. And finally, the last goal was to secure the blessings of liberty. During the Revolution against England, the colonists fought and died for liberty, or freedom. And it is no surprise that the framers made liberty a major goal of the Constitution. And the preamble, along with the amendments and the articles, all rest on 7 basic principles. The first is popular sovereignty, and this principle is known as the states having the right to alter or abolish their government. In the event that the government no longer serves the people, they can get rid of it or change it. The second principle was a limited government. In a limited government, the government only has the powers that the Constitution gives it. Third was the separation of powers. The Constitution divides the government into 3 branches: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. Checks and balances. A system of checks and balances safeguards against the abuse of power, means it keeps one section of the government from getting too strong. Each branch of the government has the power to check or limit the actions of the other 2. Federalism. The Constitution also establishes the principle of federalism, which means that it's a division of power between the federal government and the states. Republicanism. The Constitution provides for a republican form of government. Instead of taking part directly in government, citizens elect representatives to carry out their will. And finally, individual rights. The Constitution protects individual rights, such as freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to a trial by jury. And as I mentioned before, there were 3 branches of government: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. And now we're going to take a look at each branch and its functions with the government. Now, the first branch of our government is the legislative branch. And if you remember, under the Great Compromise, our legislature is a bicameral legislature, meaning there are 2 houses. The first house is the House of Representatives. And representation in this house is based on population. How many people live in your state? It appeased the larger states under the Great Compromise, and individuals who are representing their states in this house are elected by the people of their district for 2-year terms. There are currently 435 members in this house, and the leader of this house is called the Speaker. The Speaker of the House is one of the most powerful people in the federal government. The second house in our government is known as the Senate. The Senate is based on equal representation with 2 senators for each state. So that means 100 senators are in the United States Senate. Senators are elected to 2-year terms. Now, in each of these houses, there are committees. Both the House and the Senate have permanent or standing committees. Each committee deals with a specific topic, such as agriculture, banking, business, and so on. And members who have served in Congress the longest are usually appointed to the most important committees. Finally, in the legislative branch, there is something which is known as the Elastic Clause. Now, the Elastic Clause basically allows Congress to carry out any laws which are necessary and proper to protect the rights of the American citizens. So again, the Elastic Clause, it kind of gives them the ability to make any laws they want as long as they are necessary and proper in protecting Americans. The next branch of the government is the executive branch, and that is headed by the President of the United States. Now, there are some specific roles that the president should fulfill. First, most presidents follow the example set by George Washington, so majority of them only serve 2 4-year terms. There is one exception to that. They carry out the nation's laws. They direct foreign policy, so they make treaties and appoint ambassadors, and they also serve as the commander-in-chief. And only Congress has the power to declare war, but the president is commander-in-chief of our military. The framers of the Constitution set up a complex system for electing the president known as the Electoral College. When Americans vote for president, they do not vote directly for the candidate of their choice. Rather, they are voting for a group of electors who are pledged to the candidate. The number of a state's electors depends on the number of senators and representatives in the House of Representatives. No state has fewer than 3 electors. So what happens is, in states such as New York, there are many more electors than there are in, let's say, Wyoming. If a presidential candidate gets the majority of electoral college votes of a state, he or she wins that entire state. Because of this winner-take-all nature, the Electoral College, a candidate can lose the popular nationwide vote, but still be elected as president. Most recently, in 2000, the Bush versus Al Gore race, President Bush, he received the electoral vote, while Vice President Gore and presidential candidate Gore only received the popular vote. So again, winning the Electoral College, but not the popular vote. And the magic number is 270 Electoral College votes wins the presidency. The final branch of our government is the Supreme Court. Congress established the Supreme Court and authorized Congress to establish any other courts that are needed. There were a group of lower courts, which is what you would see in a town court or maybe a city court, and then you have the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court hears and decides fewer than 100 cases each year. This is the court of last resort. It's made up of only 9 justices. The president appoints these individuals, and the Congress must approve them. They hear cases that have been tried in the lower courts, appealed, and sent on to a higher court. And this has the power, this is the only branch of the government that has the power to declare laws unconstitutional. And among these 3 branches, there is a system of checks and balances. And the checks and balances allows each branch of the government to limit the power of the other 2, so that no branch gets too strong. For instance, the president can veto bills Congress has passed, Congress can override the president on his vetoes, and the House can impeach the president. Impeachments have only happened a couple times, first to Andrew Johnson, who served right after Abraham Lincoln, and to Bill Clinton. They've only been impeached by the House, but neither was convicted by the Senate. Finally, the framers of the Constitution knew they had to set up a system to amend or change the Constitution if that ever had to occur. So there was a lengthy, very difficult amendment process set up to make changes in the government. This could take weeks, months, even years to complete. Amendments can be proposed by 2/3 of the House and Senate voting, or by a national convention called by Congress. A national convention has never been called before. Amendments are ratified, also known as approved. To ratify something means to approve, by being approved by 3/4 of the state legislatures, or ratified by special conventions in 3/4 of the states. This has only happened a very few times throughout history. Well, that about wraps things up for today. I hope you enjoyed today's online lesson. When we come back, we'll be talking about life in the newly formed nation under George Washington. We'll see you next time.